We begin this hour with a look at Tennessee and a warning about where American democracy may be headed after the Supreme Court's recent rollback of key Voting Rights Act protections. In a matter of days, Tennessee Republicans pushed through a new congressional map that dismantles the state's last Democratic-held district. The map splits the city of Memphis, which is more than 60% black, into 3 districts, a move critics say dilutes black voting power and locks in GOP control of all 9 congressional seats ahead of the midterms. The NAACP has filed a lawsuit challenging the legality of the new map, and our next guest is already sounding the alarm on the threat that this will pose to black voters in her community.
I want you all to know that whether or not, however you justify this, this is an act of hate. Okay? When you take a black population in Memphis, and they are black by virtue of them being the demographics of the city. It has nothing to do with them being a Democrat or Republican. Memphis is a 64% black city. And when you sit in these chairs and you sign on to legislation, you present it and you vote for it that will deliberately dilute that voice, you need to remember what you're doing. You cannot call it anything but racism.
Joining us now is Tennessee State Senator and Minority Leader Romesh Akbari. She represents the city of Memphis. Senator, it's great to have you on the show. You called what happened in Tennessee, as we just said there, an act of hate and racism. Why do you think so, and what makes it racist?
You know, it is certainly an act of hate and racism, and it's because it cuts to the very core of the Memphis black community. Memphis is a 64% black city. We are a city where Dr. King took his last steps, where he took his last breath. And that is the district that my Republican colleagues have split into 3 different congressional districts, making sure that no district has more than 30% of the black population, ensuring that our voices will not be heard, that we will not be able to select a candidate of our choice, that our very unique needs will not be met. So to me, they can say it's partisan politics, but they know what they're doing. They didn't split white districts like this. They specifically targeted Memphis. And so to me, that is an act of racism. And to roll back voting rights in this way is an act of hate.
I want to expand on Eamon's question there for a moment, because the Wall Street Journal has a piece about race and the Tennessee gerrymander. And this is a quote: "The Tennessee gerrymander is simply a GOP effort to divide a compact populated area into multiple stringy districts for partisan gain, which is precisely what Democrats did in Virginia. It's bad for competitive elections, but it isn't racist." Can you give people a little bit of a contextual and a history lesson here?
Well, I'll tell you, that's just pretext, right? This district in Memphis was not created by the Voting Rights Act. It's not something that was split up to make sure we had a certain amount of black population or preserving a majority minority district. Instead, because of the demographics of Memphis and how Memphis is shaped, this became a majority black district. It did not start out that way. And so you have a very unique socioeconomic population. When you combine Memphis with the districts like in Lake County, a very poor rural white area, or all the way to Williamson County, which is right outside of Nashville, the richest county in the entire state, they have nothing in common with folks who are in Memphis who may have different needs around transportation and education and health care. And so you're diluting that black voice. So it's not a matter of politics. Black people in that area choose to vote as Democrats because they're voting for a candidate that aligns with their needs. They also happen to be black. They're black people who happen to be Democrats. And so I think that's what people aren't honing in on.
Representative, how do you think your party can respond to this leading into the midterms? Do you have a strategy to try to overcome the fact that there are these structural changes in your state to disenfranchise black voters, to reduce the representation of Democrats? What can be done at this point, given where the map is headed?
Well, I'll tell you, we're watching some active lawsuits. I think the NAACP filed one in state court. The Tennessee Democratic Party filed one in federal court. So first, we have to see if these maps will even take place in the August 2026 primary. I don't think that it's physically possible for our election officials to get it together before then. And then we mobilize and we organize. There are people across this state, I think, who have had this great awakening. They realize that we are, fighting outnumbered in the Tennessee General Assembly. We could not beat this in the hall halls of the legislature. Hopefully we can beat it in the judicial branch. I don't have much hope. And so now we have to organize. There are voters across this state who are simply not engaged. Tennessee has the lowest voter turnout in the entire country. And so we're working together. Every faction of the party, it does not matter if you are far to the left, in the center, or, beyond. We are working together because we recognize that if we don't, our voices will never be heard. So we're going to organize like never before. We're going to take the Stacey Abrams approach. She set the example, and we're just going to walk in her footsteps.
The new Supreme Court ruling means that in the South, certainly, there are going to be a loss of a lot of Democratic seats held by minority politicians. But then in the rest of the country, there is an opportunity for Democrats if they want to play hardball. And would you encourage states like New York to try to gerrymander so that they at least are pushing out Republicans and putting in more Democrats as a countermeasure?
I wish that gerrymandering did not exist, but unfortunately it does. And so I think where we're at this point where you have, Black voices, Democratic voices being silenced, states that have the opportunity have to lean in. I will say that a state like California, which was cited a lot by my colleagues, is different than a state like Tennessee. That actually was a ballot measure that people in that state approved. It wasn't something that was done in the darkness of a legislative hall or legislative body. But yes, I think that we have to fight fire with fire. And I am typically someone who likes to reach across the aisle, likes to look for similarities. But they have proven that no matter how we play by the rules, they are going to change them. They're going to move the finish line back, and they're going to be determined to win no matter what. And the people who lose are the American people. So yes, we've got to fight fire with fire.
A moment ago, we showed on the screen some of the protesters who have come out and tried to have their voices heard there. And there was a sign that said, it referenced Jim Crow 2.0. Do you believe that that's what this moment represents?
I definitely do. I think that we will see the largest rollback in Black representation and power since the end of Reconstruction. And we know what happened at that point. We were in for a period of absolute terrorism, from lynchings to Jim Crow, where Black people did not have a chance to have their voices recognized. And so I think we are entering into that modern era, and it's really unfortunate. I never thought in 2026, I am 42 years old, that I would be fighting for the same rights that my mentors who were in their 80s had to fight for. This is an ultimate blow to democracy, and I think that America really has to be serious about what we're doing internally if we ever want to project that we're a true democracy externally.
Where does the fight go from here, Senator? Where do you take the fight both in these new districts where Black voters will be diluted, and where do you take it at a state level to try and make sure that they are not disenfranchised, not only from their districts, but from the larger apparatus of the state?
I think we have to keep talking to people, even if we don't represent them. I'm in the Senate. There are only 6 Democrats out of 33. We do not have a Democratic senator from East Tennessee. And so we still represent them. And that's what we're going to have to lean even further into. And of course, organizing has to be key. I mean, again, I said earlier, Tennessee is a low voter turnout state. And we are not the red state that we've been portrayed to be. If you look at our statewide elections, they're a lot closer than what's indicated based on our gerrymandered districts in the state house and state senate. So we got to organize, we got to mobilize, and we got to educate, and we got to reach people and reach them until we can overcome what's been happening on a state level. And I think that's going to happen across the South, quite frankly.
Tennessee State Senator Ramesh Akbari, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Of course, the fight continues.